Applications for public service for the ZBA. Vacancies.
Oh, maybe that's him.
So I didn't talk to him about it. Oh, but he will. I was thinking about he graduated in 2023, but he didn't get that.
So they must be a clerk then that does art, Kathy. They must be a clerk or a deputy clerk who does art. They live in the Manistee.
It's such a fun weekend, and why can't I think of the name of that class? But beach glass, they call it beach glass.
Okay,
And they made a tree out of it, and it's really cool.
that's cool. Yep. Okay. It is 6:02 p.m. We are going to call the meeting to order. We are minus our supervisor who's having technical difficulties getting in on Zoom. Would someone like to make a motion to appoint trustee Dan Opsimer to supervisor pro temp for the meeting? Treasurer DeShane.
I move that trustee Dan Opsimer be the supervisor pro tem for this meeting.
Support. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
All right, thank you, Clerk Guthrie. If everyone could join us in rising for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do a moment of silence.
And we have Mr. Supervisor with us now. Supervisor Stajka, are you prepared to take over the meeting? We just rose for the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Supervisor, can you hear us?
I can hear you now.
Okay. We just stood to recite the Pledge of Allegiance, and we are on agenda item number 3, the roll call for the board.
Before we do that, I wanted to take a moment of silence to remember the students who have passed away at the horrible situation in Oxford, the thing that happened earlier, and their families, and the students and the others that were injured, and the whole Oxford community. Okay, I guess we're ready for a roll call report then. I mean, our roll call report.
All right, Supervisor Stajka?
I am here virtually from my home. I'm having some issues with sciatic pain in my back. And because of that, I also am going to ask that we not do 16 today, because I believe that a performance review should have every single member there, either I or Ms. Jackson are there tonight. So we're going to put that up till next week. But in any event, I am here from my home in Wilderness.
Clerk Guthrie is here. Treasurer DeShane?
Present.
Trustee Jackson is absent this evening. Trustee Ossimer?
Here.
Trustee Sumlin? Here. Trustee Wazinski? Here. So we have 3, 4, 5, 6 board members here.
Okay. Thank you, and I apologize. I'm on my phone because my computer has decided to also act up along with my back. So it's just one of those nights. What can I say? We have a couple presentations coming up, and the first one I'd like to ask our clerk to handle. She used to be in charge of things like home TV at Meridian, and it is very appropriate that she handle presentation A.
Okay, thank you, Supervisor Stajka. I will remain in my little station here, but I will ask that the communications department, I see Brandy Yates is here, and Andrea Smiley is here. I will ask the communications team to come up. And their crew. Miss Yates has been with the township since, what year were you hired, Brandy?
2007 as an intern and 2010 on staff.
Since 2007. And Andrea Smiley has been with the township since
2015.
2015. Little tidbit about Brandy and Andrea. First, Brandy, both of them are rock stars, by the way. Everyone's a rock star at Home TV. They work tremendously hard bringing communications to the township and creating videos. And I know Sam is around here somewhere, and she's a rock star also.
She should be coming down in just a second.
Okay, she's probably running the meeting. It is extremely difficult to not only put together the videos that you submit so that for recognition, but to go up against major cities across the country to receive an overall excellence award. We're talking about Seattle, San Francisco, Tampa, San Antonio. We're talking about major cities that Home TV has had to compete against. Little Meridian Township, 44,000 people, has had to compete against at a national level. This is an extremely awesome recognition. Brandy Yates and Andrea, I remember Andrea, I called her up on a Thursday evening, asked her to work the next day. I fell in love with her over the phone. She's an absolute rock star. She's still a rock star. Brandy Yates she was turned down for the internship and her interview. And then I went to Applebee's with my husband, and I looked at my husband and I said, I made a gigantic mistake. I said, that girl right there, the hostess, she is a rock star, and I turned her down for the internship. And Brandy came over to the table and I said, I apologize, I made a huge mistake, and I'd love you to consider being with Home TV. And she's a blessing to the township. Everyone is. Cortland, how long have you been with the township?
Been with the township since summer of 2018.
Summer of 2018. Rockstar intern. He's been an intern with the township. If I owned a communication company that made any money, I'd hire you in a heartbeat to make videos for me. You're great. So is Sam and everyone else. So congratulations on continuing excellence with home TV programming. You guys are wonderful.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here. We're normally behind the camera and not in front of it very often. Yeah, we have 2 national awards. One for our programming of a township board meeting from November of 2020, a virtual meeting, and then the overall excellence. And then Sam received a finalist award for a documentary she did about the first female Eagle Scouts that she did at a regional level.
Excellent.
Somebody hiding in the back. There you go.
There we go.
Thank you so much.
Good job.
Better check those real quick, Andrea.
Is that it? Is that it?
Yes.
Okay. Well, that's wonderful. You know, year after year after year, we are hoping to get the award. And this is just incredible. We have such a wonderful asset here. And I know that many people have gone into building that. Our next presentation is the Montessori Redmore School Green Grant. David Spoy, like to have trustee Nick present us.
Hello, my name is David Spoy. I'm the Buildings and Grounds guy at Montessori Radmore School in Okemos. For the Green Infrastructure Grant, we broke it into 2 parts. The first part was the greenhouse improvement part, and then the second one was our Pathway to Discovery, which is a nature trail that encircles our campus. The first part, there it goes. The greenhouse is heavily used on our school. We have kids from toddler through 6th grade. We use it every day. We use it throughout the year. Right now we still have plants in the greenhouse growing to feed our little bunnies and guinea pigs. We needed to replace the old wooden foundation around the green. It's actually a hoop house because it doesn't have dedicated heat and cooling. It's whatever. But the entire foundation was rotted out. All of our raised beds were rotted. We needed to replace all that. And I did that. And I would like you all to know that it took forever plus 3 hours. We wanted to redesign the layout of our greenhouse to improve the student accessibility and how much planting we have. We've been redesigning our irrigation system, and we replanted our herb garden. So this is what a top view of what our greenhouse looks like right now. And we didn't have a whole lot of old pictures of it, sorry. But we increased our planting area by probably 50%. And we purchased student-size shovels. We had these big adult-size shovels, and little first graders couldn't really dig. But our kids are responsible for the planting, maintenance, harvest, and sale of what we grow in the greenhouse. We use everything, and our Jackie Artuso, who is pictured right there planting with kids, is just phenomenal. She handles all of that, but the kids, we got soil, we got plants, we got seeds, and right here the kids are planting with us. There it is. So the greenhouse is just a wonderful part of our school. We are so thankful to have improved it. And the old herb garden is on the left, the new herb garden is on the right, and the kids are planting it right there. It has been just a wonderful asset to our school, and we are excited about its future. The second part was the pathway to discovery. Our campus is about 9.5 acres, and we are bump up against a wetland, and we figured it's about 3 distinct ecosystems, and so our nature trail that goes around it was completely overgrown. There were sections of it that were impassable, so we've been clearing that. We decided to make it a really immersive, natural experience to try to teach kids as they go around the trail with their parents, with the staff, and we decided to have experts come onto our property. We've had arborists, we've had naturalists, we've had the Audubon Society, and they all said the same thing. We want to raise our canopy and lower our floor. We have so many invasive species that we are trying to remove. We got a lot of buckthorn, we got a lot of tree of heaven, garlic mustard is everywhere. And so we are trying really hard to be good caretakers of our property. So we use money towards a lot of different native species, and we're trying to increase our species diversity. And we designed a bunch of signs to go around the property at regular intervals. These are just a couple of examples of the kind of native plants that we planted with the kids this year. I don't know how many of you have ever tried to get 20 first graders to plant 78 plants. It's not too easy, but they are great listeners, and everything is a teachable moment for us. This is me in my business casual, teaching the kids how to plant a hickory bush or hickory tree. They all took part. All grade levels took part, and they take part every year. Here's our garlic mustard hunt. We converted some just overgrown shade areas to natural native shade gardens. And we decided to put in signage around the property. There's about 14 signs. This is about as good on a computer as I can get, so I'm sorry if you can't see it better than that, but the first sign is a welcome sign, and we have a little map of the property, and kids, all of the signs really correspond to things that are already in our curriculum. The compass rose, the following of maps, the greenhouse sign has diagrams of plant structure and how to plant things. The tree signs has things that kids can really look at and say, this is what's here. This is what's living with us on our property. We have mammals and fungi, reptiles, compost and brush piles. We're trying to show the kids what you can do in your own backyard, what's already there, and if we're going to live on this property and with these animals, we got to take care of it. We got to take care of the land. So we have, as I said, we bump up into a wetland. We're trying to teach the kids the importance of wetlands and its management. Anything that goes on the ground is one day going to end up in the water. And these are the last signs here. So we have QR codes on all the signs, so teachers and parents, when they walk around the property, they can click on it and then learn more information. And as I said, almost all of these signs directly relate to things that are in our curriculum. We have a bat project going on right now where the kids I helped them build a bunch of bat houses, which was, again, super fun. They did a great job. They're being stained and varnished right now. They'll go up next year. So what next for us is we are, as I said, we're just doing the bat boxes. We're going to try to put bee boxes on there. We're trying to plant trees for an orchard. We're looking at solar options. We're looking at planting more and more specimens of trees to increase diversity. Right now we have basically spruce, maple, white pine, and black cherry, and those are our mature trees. We need lots more different kinds of trees that to increase diversity. and get rid of some of this garlic mustard. That is an ongoing thing that will never end. It's here forever, but we got to do it every year and get rid of it. So we are so thankful for the opportunity that you guys have given us to really improve the property. It feels like, I was telling Courtney, it feels like we really got a ball rolling. Everyone is excited about it. Everyone is wanting to volunteer. And it's been really fun. I do want to thank, we tried to use local vendors whenever we could, and they were so helpful. They gave us free trees. They would hand us a thing and just say, take it, you know, and Harris Nature Center did some good stuff for us, Heyman Farms, and we were just, I can't say enough, I'm so thankful for all the help that we got. And thank you very much for the opportunity, and if you have any questions, now's the time.
Does anybody have any questions? And maybe before that, Ms. Wasinski, you want to make any comments about this program?
Yeah, sure, thanks Supervisor. It is very exciting. You can see all the great work. It's amazing. $5,000 doesn't go far in all the work you guys did with that. And then under budget. So they still have some funds that they still have some plans for. So that's fantastic. You can hear the excitement in Mr. Coy's, presentation, and it's just really great to know all of these things are happening at such a small level. I mean, it's very consistent with what our environmental commission's values are, and learning this at a very young level is just only going to contribute to the community as a whole. So thank you so much. We really encourage you to apply again for FY22.
Well, we intend to.
Excellent. So yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions or comments?
Clerk does.
Clerk?
Oh, thank you so much for this presentation. I live down the street in a neighborhood off Mount Hope Road and have often walked my dog or my grandkids down to the Montessori school, and I've always been very impressed with the property, and I can see what's available for the children of the school beyond fence, and I've always been very impressed, and this is even more impressive. So I really appreciate your contribution to the community and the contribution of the Montessori school for the kids in our area. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And we do feel like we are just struck gold on that property, and we are really trying to show the kids that, all right, this is what we have. You've got to take care of it. This is how you take care of it, and this is how you promote, a healthy environment. And it goes a long way,
I wondered what you were going to do when you purchased the piece of property in front where the house was and that little barn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so I see the pathway goes where that little, was it a chicken coop or something? Where that little barn was back
there's
there.
The little garage is ours. That's we kept that from that house.
Okay.
But we raised the house, and then that's green space. That's dedicated green space. And we are hoping to put honeybees there at some point and teach the kids about, for our pollination curriculum, and but it'll be green space. That's
I look forward to walking down there and seeing your progress.
Hopefully it keeps going. It's just me doing a lot of that, so give me a break if the lawn isn't exactly mowed. But
Anyone else? Well, thank you very much. Radmore is a great asset to our community. We really appreciate it, and what you're doing with the kids, and this whole idea of bringing in the ecosystem. Everything. I mean, it's wonderful. We really appreciate it. Thank you for your hard work.
thank you.
Okay. We're now ready to move on to our citizens addressing agenda items and non-agenda items. Do we have any citizens that are there? Three. I'll ask you to take a look. Is that a no? You're very small, so I can't really see your face.
We don't have anyone here, Supervisor.
All right. Thank you very much. Okay, well, then I'll move on to the Township Manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor and Board. Just a couple things to update you this evening. One of the great projects to look forward to next year is the Lake Lansing to MSU pathway. And we received, when we look at that $2.6 million project, how much local funds do we have to commit to that? The project's been designed, it'll be accomplished next year. And we received word late last week that we received a $300,000 grant for that project through the MDR Trust Fund. So if you take a look at the $2.6 million project, if you take the grant funds from the DNR and what Ingham County is committed to that through the Parks Millage, our total commitment for the $2.6 million is around $300,000 out of our Pathways Fund. Our deer call, we continue our archery season until December 31, and we're currently at 104 deer so far, with a goal of 350. Of course, on January 1, that switches over to the police department and a firearms program. The Township Board and staff will be engaged all day Saturday on a goal setting for 2022 and a review of 2021. And finally, the local roads program for 2021 is complete. We got to all roads and good work by Manager Perry and his team. There are a couple of streets that we didn't get to. Those residents have been notified by mail that they'll be first up for 2022. And also, the board will receive the list for 2022 at your next meeting on December 14th. We're prepared to present that to you. That's it for this evening. As far as the Lake Lansing pathway, the deer call, the goal setting, and local roads, unless you have any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the manager? Was that the clerk had her hand up first?
No, I was adjusting my glasses that keep falling off my mask. Sorry.
Okay. Oh, there you go. Now I can actually see you. Did anyone else have any questions for the manager? I guess not. Okay, we're ready to move on then. And our next item is the board member reports of activities and their announcements. Ms. Sutherland.
Yes, thank you, Supervisor. I attended the Economic Development Corporation meeting on December 2nd. It was a very fast meeting. We didn't stay very long. We talked about setting the calendar for 2022, and we talked about a joint meeting with the Meridian Area Business Association. So we're planning a joint meeting in the first quarter to plan and implement events that support our small business community. But it was just a very quick meeting. There wasn't a whole lot going on. So anyway, that's what my report.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Yes, Trustee Wazinski.
Thank you, Supervisor. Report on Environmental Commission. Our last meeting was last Wednesday. We are working to develop our FY22 goals. There's so much that we can and should be doing, but we're really going to work on focusing on what is tangible and that we can accomplish in 1 year. The team brought up, the commission brought up the idea of potentially presenting all of our FY21 accomplishments to the board. So I talked with you offline. I'll talk with you, Mr. Supervisor, about that. Some of the things that there was discussion about was maybe considering an Environmental Appreciation Award for a resident and or volunteer. Potentially pursuing Meridian Township as a green community. And still a lot of other things in discussion. We're also reappointing some folks this evening, so we'll look at that. Groundwater Management Board, we're still goal setting and has a lot of discussions about the goals for FY22 as well. That meeting is tomorrow to follow up. And that is my report for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Others? Yes, Treasurer.
Thank you, Supervisor. Yesterday, I attended the DDA meeting here in this room. The new news from the Village of Okemos development was not encouraging. Hopefully, the board can get an update from the developers soon. Yesterday, I attended the swearing in of our new Meridian Township Police Department Sergeant Curtis Squires. Congratulations, Sergeant Squires. He's going to be a great addition to the leadership in our police department. On the November 19th, along with many of the board members here, I attended the LEAP Art Grant unveiling at our marketplace on the Green. Exceptionally nice day, well-attended event as well. There was also the ribbon cutting for the new ice rink at the Kiwanis Youth Sports Pavilion at the marketplace. And at least one board member put his skates on and tried out the new ice, artificial ice. Regarding these masks and the pandemic we're all struggling with, the news is that Michigan had more cases per capita than any other state as of last week. Only 55% of our population is fully vaccinated. On personal business last week, I was in New York City, and I'm here to tell you that their mask requirements are serious. They were hit hardest and hit first by the virus, and they're not messing around with it anymore. And it's a lesson for all of us that this pandemic has not gone away, and ignoring it doesn't work. Masking up does, as well as vaccinations. Lastly, I wanted to do a special shout out and thank you to our Cortland Jenkins, who was just in the room with Home TV. Cortland has been an intern and part-time staff for 3 years now. That man has been to more meetings than I think the entire board combined, as well as every event. He's always in the building, he's always there, he's filming, he's taking pictures. He's been exceptional. He really represents the very best of the intern program that Clerk Guthrie got started years ago, and of the communication staff, which continues to produce excellent results with half the staffing they had just 3 years ago. Thank you very much, Cortland. We appreciate all you did for Meridian Township. That's my report.
Nicely said. Anyone else? If not, we will move on. Next is approval of the agenda, and I would ask that this be without item 16. Get a motion? Yes, Mr. DeShane.
I move the agenda be approved with the amendment suggested by the supervisor of removal of the manager's evaluation.
Support.
And supported by?
Wazinski.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And I say aye. Any opposed? I guess we have no opposed. All right. Consent agenda, communications, the bills, a ratification of a new police officer appointment, and that's always great to have. And the Silver Dakota State's Public Street Lighting Improvement Resolution number 5. One of those many SADs. Okay. Is there a motion? Miss Trustee Wazinski.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda as is, as presented.
Okay. Sutherland seconds.
Support?
All right, Sutherland already seconded. Any comments or anything on the minutes?
No.
If not, we need a roll call.
Trustee Selman?
Yes.
Trustee Wazinski?
Yes.
Trustee Opsimer?
Yes.
Treasurer DeShane?
Yes.
Clerk Guthrie votes yes. Supervisor Stikle?
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you all very much. We'll now move on. We don't have questions for attorney or hearings today, so we'll move on to our action items. And we have rezoning number 210705114. That's the Jodan Drive rezone north half of property from RCC, which is a multiple family maximum 34 dwelling units per acre, to RB, single family high density, final adoption. Mr. Opsimer.
I move to adopt a resolution approving for final adoption rezoning number 21070, an ordinance to rezone the north half of an approximate .42 acre parcel located at 5114 Jodan Drive from RCC multifamily maximum 34 dwelling units per acre to RB single family high density.
Support.
Who supported that?
Clerk Guthrie.
Thank you very much. All right, Mr. Officer, you want to comment on this?
Just simply that this is the final adoption or final approval for this rezoning where we're reverting this parcel to allow for the single-family use, and the upzoning was a condition, well, the dezoning was a condition of the original upzoning to make way for this. And we appreciate Director Schmidt's work with the applicant to get this all the way through the process.
Anyone else? We did discuss this in the past. We had it for introduction previously, and now it's final adoption. We need a roll call vote.
Treasurer DeShane?
Yes.
Trustee Opsimer?
Yes.
Trustee Wazinski?
Yes.
Supervisor Stajka?
Yes.
Clerk Guthrie votes yes. Trustee Sunland?
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you all very much. Now we're on to 12B, which is the mixed-use planned unit development ordinance update. We have made some changes to that, and some excellent changes, I think. Anyone want a motion? Treasurer.
I move to adopt the resolution approving for final adoption ordinance number 2021-07, a zoning ordinance amendment to Article 4, District Regulations of the Charter Township Meridian Zoning Code to update the zoning ordinance to update the mixed-use planned unit development MUPUD regulations.
Support.
Okay, that was supported. You want to comment, Mr. DeShane?
We have Director Schmidt at the podium. I would just like to maybe ask him a question, and I think other board members might have a question as well. If any of our potential developers seen this new ordinance, and what kind of feedback have you gotten from those people that are going to be adhering to this new amendment? Are they excited about it? Are they not so excited about it? What's your feedback so far?
Yeah, I've actually circulated it to a couple of developers thus far that have projects floating around. We'll know a little more next week. I believe we're meeting with one of them more formally to go through some concepts, but at least the architect on that project thought that this was a pretty unique approach that he hadn't seen elsewhere to try and address some development concerns / provide a higher quality project while still getting the developer to where they need to be as well. So, initial feedback is positive. It certainly reads a lot better. They definitely said that. So hopefully the combination of those two things is going to get us a little more what everyone wants to see under these ordinances.
It's been something this board, going back 5 years, has known that needed to be done. The MUPUD was something we knew we needed, and we also knew that the existing ordinance was tough. First of all, it was tough for the board to get its arms around it as to what it did it achieve our goals, and so I think this is a tool that we can understand and use more effectively. Thank you and the Planning Commission for the good work on this ordinance.
Thank you. Yes. I would comment that between the staff, the commission, and some excellent recommendations from Trustee Opsimer, we have dealt with one of the most difficult parts of this very well, which is these. All of a sudden, I'm having a senior moment here. Anyway. It's very good. And, looking forward to it. Do you want to make comments? Mr. Opsimer.
Just to very briefly thank Director Schmidt, Mr. Chapman, and your department and the Planning Commission for the work on this. I do think this is a very thorough rewrite, but I think we've arrived at one single ordinance that kind of achieved that two ordinance philosophy that we were kind of talking about as we worked through this, and I think we've done that within one framework. So I think it's very efficient, and look forward to seeing an actual project come forward with it, and any feedback in the interim that people have.
Amenities is what I was sure. Yeah. Excellent work. As well as everything else. Anyone else? Make comment. Okay, we're ready for a vote. This is for final adoption.
Clerk Guthrie votes yes. Supervisor Steichen?
Yes.
Treasurer DeShane?
Yes.
Trustee Absmer?
Yes.
Trustee Sunland?
Yes.
Trustee Wazensky?
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you all very much. Our next and last action item tonight is the board and commission reappointments. And we have a list. Those, they've been consulted, they want to be reappointed. We'll deal with the vacancies at the upcoming meeting, but for now we're dealing with the reappointments that have to be done with their terms, et cetera. And we have it. I got together with the manager and others, and this is what we came up with. Mr. Opsmer.
I move to approve the reappointments as presented in the December 7th, 2021 board packet.
Support.
All right, any comments?
My only comments would be to thank everyone for their service over the previous terms and years, and to thank them for their interest in continuing to serve on the various boards and commissions. And just to put a plug in for residents who may be listening at home, that we do have vacancies, and so if you are interested in serving on boards and commissions, please go to the township website and fill out an application for public service. Specifically, I know of a couple of vacancies, several vacancies we have on the Zoning Board of Appeals, so if there are things that interest you in the community, please take a look at that and submit your application. Thank you.
Ms. Wazensky, you had your hand up.
Yes, I would like to also say thank you to each and every one of our volunteers and board and commission members. A lot of work goes in from each person, and it's impressive to see just the appointments here tonight. I do have one question. I think the question's for the clerk, but I'm not sure. I'm just wondering, and I had been asked previously, but how do we determine the terms for each different board and commissions, considering that they're a little bit different for each one? Do you know?
What do you mean?
So for example, the Building Board of Appeals is a 3-year term, but the, the Community Resource Commission is a 2-year term. The Downtown Development Authority is a 4-year term. So I was just wondering, how do we determine terms per commission and board?
I believe, and someone can correct me, that this was set by Township Board long before me and any of us.
Well,
Some of it is state statute, but
some of it is actually dictated by state law.
Okay.
EDA, there's a number of these groups, planning commission, et cetera, that are actually established under state law provisions, and we're guided by those terms. But then others, like, for example, we created the Transportation Commission just a few years ago, and we set the term in the process of its creation. So it would be based on which group you're talking about as to whether the board did it or whether it was required to be done that way. If you really need to know or want to know, we can have, I'm sure we can do some research, come up with how they came into being. It would just take a little while.
No, I think that's sufficient. Thank you. I understand that it's either legislation or voted on by a commission or board. Thank you.
Yes, so Treasurer.
First of all, I want to ask the clerk, do you have an idea of how many openings we have in aggregate for all of our boards and commissions currently?
I can get that number to you. I have to look it up.
Great. And reiterate what Trustee Opsimer said, that we do have openings. We need citizens to be active on these boards and commissions. They're important. They determine zoning interpretation. In case of the Planning Commission, they directly impact the work we do here on this board. Other ones, like the Community Resource Commission, impacts the lives of hundreds and hundreds of families every year. they do really good, important work, and it's the work of our citizens. It's what makes Meridian such a great place to live, is that we have such tremendous response to this. But people do move, people retire, people decide that 4 years or 8 years is enough, and they were going to step down. So we do need additional people to step forward and fill these boards and commissions, and encourage anyone who's interested to contact our office, Clerk Guthrie's office, for an application. And if they need to know more about the Board of Commission, we can put them in touch with the staff that's responsible for that. Also want to thank the manager for a gift he sent out to each of the members of our boards and commissions. Had a loaf of bread from a local holiday bread from a local Meridian Township bakery, sent to each and every one of them. And many of them were sent out, delivered by hand by our police cadets. We made it extra special for them. Last year, as you may require, we all got Meridian Township masks, and so it's become a tradition that the manager has made sure it's gotten done every year. It's a small thing, but I think it goes a long way for us, this board, to show its appreciation by the gift organized by the manager. So thank you, Manager Walsh.
And in fact, those gifts were in place of, in the past, there's been a nice little gathering, a party, so to speak, that others have contributed to help us pay for. And unfortunately, due to COVID, we haven't been able to do that recently. So the manager brilliantly came up with the idea of these small gifts, which, again, they're certainly not the kind of payment these people deserve. They deserve a lot more, but at least they know that we care. Ms. Guthrie, you had your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Supervisor Steinka. I too want to thank everyone for their time and their continued dedication to the township. I personally, on a personal note, I never thought when I started working with government in 1998 that I would be interested in board meetings and commission meetings and all kinds of meetings that the township has to make everything function. But it actually quickly became one of my most interesting aspects of interning for the township. And I actually, I came here because I wanted to do sports at home TV, and I actually fell in love with the meetings. And my family used to get upset with me all the time at the house, and they made me cancel cable because I was watching meetings at home all the time, because I just really enjoyed watching the meetings. So I'm saying this because if there's anyone out there who's maybe intimidated or unsure, or maybe they don't think that they may fit the bill to be on one of these boards or commissions, you do fit the bill. So I just want to encourage anyone out there who's kind of thought about it but wasn't really sure. I just really want to encourage you to participate in township government at some level. It really is a lot of fun. It may sound mundane or boring, but it really is a lot of fun, and there's some great people that you get to know in the township and in our community, and you can make lifelong friendships. And so I just really want to encourage you to fill out those applications on the township website, or give any of us a call. We'll be honest with you about our experience working on the board or any of the other boards or commissions. That's all.
One more voice added to the choir. Yes, we do have a number of openings. It's a few less than we have in some years, thank heaven. But we also have fewer applications on file than we've had in quite a while. So we really do hear from people. We really do need to have certain step forward. The township really, it functions through its 100 plus employees under the manager's direction. And it functions through this board, but it also functions through all of these boards and commissions and their members who work so hard. We truly, truly appreciate it. And as we said, some of them, they have direct decision-making or power, or at least highly recommended power to this board, such as the Planning Commission was mentioned. There's only Board of Appeals. There's environmental. There's quite a few of them actually that give great to this board, even make some decisions. So please, if you have any interest at all in government, the other members will teach you how to do it. It's not that hard. So please step. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, then we need a vote to redo this.
Yes.
Trustee Absmer.
Yes.
Trustee Sunland.
Yes.
Trustee Wazinski.
Yes.
Supervisor Stika.
Yes,
Clerk Guthrie votes yes. Motion carries 6-0.
thank you. Okay, we're now moving on to our discussion items. And the first one is a kind of important one. It reflects our willingness to interact with other communities and try to do a more global approach, a cooperative approach to government, and that's the Williams Township Police Contract. Would the address this first?
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor, board members. Working with the manager and the supervisor at Williamstown Township, we all understand.
This is Chief Flogger talking, by the way. Go ahead.
Working with through the manager, the supervisor, and having the understanding that we are short-staffed at this time. You know, we are authorized for 41 sworn police officers. At this time, we're at 36, and realizing that we need to maintain our level of service here in Meridian Township. So having that discussion with Supervisor Bloomquist of Williamstown Township, we had to pull back from those 80 hours of service that we were providing to them and offer a 40-hour weekly service for patrol time. We will still respond to emergency calls for service or those calls for service after hours. The contract really hasn't changed other than there's kind of a cafeteria style plan of hours to work. So depending on our staffing levels, what we're able to offer, and then also Williamstown Township can decide whether or not when we get to full staffing, if they'd like to return to 80 hours, stay at 40 hours, or if there's even a provision in there where they could reduce the number of hours down to 20. But I feel that we will be able to service the folks in Williamstown Township, maintain our level of service here in Meridian Township, how this contract is outlined at this time. You're muted, sir.
Muted there. Anyone have any questions? Comments? Ms. Wazinski.
Quick question, Chief. I was reading through. Can you kind of walk me through what the difference between what 80 hours looks like and 40? Because I'm certain it's not an 8 to 5. And what would entail in those hours?
Right. So regular general patrol hours, that's when there's an officer dedicated to patrolling the streets, conducting generalized traffic enforcement, neighborhood policing, vacation property checks, those day-to-day non-dispatched operations that we as a police department do, community policing activities. Those are the things we do during those 40 hours. During the 80 hours, 80 hours is equivalent to 2 full-time officers. If we're providing 80 hours a week, that's 2 people out of the complement that I have next door that is dedicated to Williamstown Township. Right now, we're going to back it off. There was a discussion about concern over increase in billable hours because those outside of those hours, we bill Williamstown Township for those hours we respond on those non-patrol hour calls for service, and there's a maximum billable hours that is outlined in this contract. Those maximum billable hours we've never come even close to that. And I don't believe, and we'll learn through experience and be able to adjust if necessary, but I don't see us doubling the number of billable hours that we're billing Williamstown Township as it is. There'll be a slight increase, but the calls for service, the level out there because of the population, the fewer number of roads, is a fraction of what we have here in the township.
Understood. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Others? Trustee Absmer.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Manager Walsh and Chief Plaga for working with our neighbors to the east on this. Obviously, one of the things that I was hearing is, based on the initial bid when they put this out to RFP many years ago before we contracted, I believe we were the lone bidder and they weren't hearing very significant interest from the sheriff's office. So I'm glad we were able to kind of work on a flexible contract that still delivers service that they need, at least, a minimum standard of service that they're going to need. And we're here to help our neighbors and be good stewards in the region. So thank you.
Thanks.
Steiger.
Yes, Chief. The rate, or the hourly rate you worked through for the 40 hours a week, is that a higher rate than past years due to our costs of putting officers through the academy and our replacement cost, if you will?
So the way I worked with Director Madison, Finance Director Madison, on coming up with the cost for providing police services. If you have for 80 hours, it's almost 5% of our overall department. You know, administration, officers, cars, training, equipment, academy, all of those numbers. So what we did is we drew out some of the numbers for the services that we don't provide that are in our budget. The extra amount that is paid to MERS because of the millage that was passed here in the township, we wouldn't levy 5% of that against Williamstown Township. That's not a millage that they've passed. But so we pulled that out. We pulled out things like we don't provide school community resource offices because all of their schools are in the city of Williamston. We pulled those costs out of there. There's a couple of other small costs that we had pulled out, and then determined that what percentage of the overall budget was affected. And then we figured in 3% cost increases over each year because of we've experienced materials, fuel, uniforms, training costs have gone up over the years. So there's a pretty significant leap from what 2021 billable hours would cost to what 2022, but those are reflective of actual costs that's incurred by the township.
So it was a more organic, more inclusive number than we've used in the past.
Yes.
That's the right approach. I think our citizens are reasonably focused and they understand the need for this and do not mind helping out a neighborhood community. At the same time, they don't want to subsidize that either when those residents themselves are capable of paying their fair share and I'm sure willing to pay their fair share. Thank you. Thank you.
Other board members? We're into discussion. So unless I'm not hearing any negatives, it looks like this contract should come back to us for approval at our next meeting next week. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor.
And thank you,
board
Mr.
members.
Walsh. Okay, our next item is a poverty exemption guidelines, and I will tell you that I have discussed this a number of times with Trustee Mercer, who came up with the thought that we need to revise where we are, and the memo is from him, and so I'm going to let him lead this discussion, and quite frankly, we do a backstretch or two, so I may take my picture while he's doing that.
Thank you, Supervisor Stajka. So just to go over this with the board, so this came about as a concept in my mind because of a constituent case that I received from a constituent in a different community who had previously qualified and due to a change in that community had become unqualified based on income, well, was qualified for a reduction in their poverty exemption. And through that experience, I learned that we have the ability under state law to set the income and the asset thresholds for the poverty exemption. So the poverty exemption is a component under state law where we can give up to a 100, a 50, or a 25% reduction on property taxes, and it's not just the township property taxes, it's the entirety of the tax bill, to families who qualify. And so the discretion that we have is setting that income and asset threshold for qualification. And we can only give out the reductions of 150 or 25%. So we can set thresholds in which someone qualifies for 100%, thresholds in which households qualify for 50%, and thresholds in which households qualify for 25%. And in looking at the issue, many of the communities across Ingham County, with the exception of Williamstown Township, the majority that I looked at did not use a multiplier, as we call it. So we take the multiplier and we apply it to the federal guidelines for poverty standard, right? So that's the initial table in the packet. It lists the household family size based on the number of people in the home, and you take the multiplier and apply it to those guidelines. Right now, we use a 1.35 multiplier. So our asset and income standards are 135%, above the federal poverty guidelines. A lot of public policy basically acknowledges that the federal poverty guidelines are not reflective of what it means to live in poverty. So Medicaid expansion, for instance, was expanding Medicaid eligibility to families that are at or below 130% of the federal poverty guidelines, right? So the guidelines just kind of sit there and become antiquated and out of date. And so what we do is we set policy and we apply multipliers to it. And so that happens in a lot of circumstances. So state law, the minimum that we can do, we have to give poverty exemptions to every household at or below the poverty guidelines federally. And right now we're doing just over that with a 1.35 multiplier. Now, when I looked at other counties and other communities, Washtenaw County has given a lot more consideration to this. And I think what might be happening in Meridian, or here in Ingham, a lot of local units probably just don't understand that they even have this discretion. And if they don't understand they have the discretion, they haven't even discussed it. In Washtenaw County, their local officials have kind of come together county-wide, and so they've tried to have some uniformity. You'll notice in the tables that begin on, let's see, the page numbers were removed, but there's a table towards the end of it that lists various local units, cities, townships within Washtenaw County, and it lists their multiplier for incomes, the income thresholds, and the asset thresholds. And so you'll notice that they range anywhere from 1.5 to a 2.2. So Scioto Township, page 5. Oh, there's the page number. Yep, it's up at the top now. So Scioto Township is at a 2. Ann Arbor's at a 2.2. The city of Dexter's at a 2.2. Those are some of the highest in the state. Webster in Washtenaw County is also at a 2, and then you have a range of other local units that range from 1.5 up to that 2.2 max for the multiplier. And their asset thresholds are also significantly higher. So what I've put into the packet for discussion, just as a starting point for the board, is a recommendation that I put together, which would be increasing the multiplier that we use for the 100% poverty exemption from a 1.35 to a 1.85, meaning that we're going to 185% of the federal poverty guideline, and increasing the multiplier for the asset limit from the 1.35 to a 2.25. And so the asset threshold would be higher. The reason being is that the assets are pretty exhaustive. All of your vehicles count towards the assets. All of your personal property in the home, your 401k, any retirement savings, your savings account, everything pretty much is included with the lone exception of the home that you're living in. So any other assets that you have count against that threshold. So you could have a family today, based on where our limits currently are. If you're a family of 3 and you come under hard times and you lose your job, if you have a 401k and with 7,000 in it and 2 cars, well, technically our limit for a family of 3 is 29,000 for assets. So if they just have 2 cars worth 10,000 and a 401k with 10,000 in it, they're not going to qualify just based on the assets, regardless of how low their income is. So that's why I looked at doing a higher multiplier on the asset side, which is something that a lot of local units in Washtenaw do. And in terms of fiscal impact, our assessor ran the numbers, and we're at about $8,000 in township taxes today. The average home that qualifies today has a taxable value of about $57,000, I believe. And so the overall tax hit across all of the taxing jurisdictions would probably be in the $40,000 range. We didn't get that number from the assessor, but our township tax impact was $8,000 for the 14 eligible homes. And then the other threshold that I put in here is increasing or creating a category for a 50% exemption, and that would be households that fall above a 1.85 multiplier, but below a 2. And then for the assets, it would go from a 2.25 multiplier to a 2.5. And so the tables with the actual dollar amounts applied are listed there in the packet on page 3 and 4. And so households in this range would only get 50% exemption. We're going from a 1.35 overall up to a 2. So we're not quite doubling the income and asset thresholds, well, the income thresholds. So I suspect roughly we'd see twice as many homes apply. So we have 14 eligible homes today. So we might get up to, 30 to 35 homes total if we see approximately a doubling of the amount of eligible homes apply and receive it. And of course, the homes that apply and receive it in the new categories would probably be slightly higher taxable value. So instead of 8,000 across 14 homes, we might see 9 or 10,000 across 14 homes. So we'd likely see a little bit higher taxable value. We're looking at slightly over 100,000 right now for the market value of the eligible homes. So these are among the, lowest valued market value homes in the township, being at just over 100,000 or just under. And so that's the overview, and happy to answer any questions that board members may have.
Mr. Shane.
Thank you, Supervisor. And thank you, Trustee Opson, for bringing this to the board's attention. These numbers are out of date, and I think they are certainly worth revisiting. And these are strict guidelines. In HUD housing, for example, there are income limits, but there's virtually no limits on assets to live in Section 8 housing. You have to pay a certain interest on those assets are calculated in your income, but they don't put a cap on it. And these rules, as Trustee Opson pointed out, 2 cars and a little bit of a retirement, and you're disqualified. I do think we need to, before we take action, I think we need to look at or try and find a more exact number for what this is going to cost. Not only the township, but also the schools, because of every dollar we get, we keep about 20 cents, but 40 cents of that dollar goes to our local schools. And so this is going to impact the schools as well as the township. And I think we can get that data. I'd hope to have it before this meeting, knowing it was going to be on the agenda, but with this being the first week of taxes, I do not have time to do the research. The state does not reimburse us for these exemptions.
No, they do not. They require the minimum standard of using the federal guidelines.
Right. The state also does not reimburse us for veterans exemptions. If you're a disabled veteran and the VA has certified you there for that, you take that form to our assessor's office and it essentially wipes out your local property taxes. The state passed that a few years ago with no reimbursement set for the municipalities who are losing that exemption. So, and what we're finding is that as more and more veterans agencies are making veterans aware of this, the number of veterans exemption is going up every year. And that will impact our tax revenue and impacts the amount of revenue that our schools and other municipalities get. So before we move forward with this one, I do want the board to look at those numbers, share those numbers with the board, and before we bring it back for another board meeting, I will have those numbers for the board. But I agree with this in principle. I think it's the right thing to do. And once we know how much it's going to cost us, or a better idea what it's going to cost us, I think we can all make an intelligent vote on this matter. Thank you again, Trustee Opson.
We don't have to rush into this, but I think it's important that we do something here. So I can see that we should maybe look at doing something more in January rather than right away, because we do need to have everything before us. Mr. Oxford, have more you want to comment there?
Yeah, so just a little bit more context on data. So Williamstown Township does go up to, they do have eligibility up to 2 times the federal guideline. Now, for some of those households, they only do a 25% reduction. So what they propose is a little bit different than what we have. But nevertheless, I asked Supervisor Bloomquist how many homes qualified, because they'd be going up to 2 times. just like we would, and so they have 3 to 4 applicants this year, even using twice the federal poverty guideline. And so they're a community of 5,000 people, we're a community of 44,000 people. So we're about 8.8 times larger than them. So we would see, based on their numbers, 26 to 34 households apply, which is roughly, where I was forecasting that I think we'll roughly see the number of households double, and the fiscal impact just slightly more than double. I'm erring on the side of higher numbers, so I'm erring conservatively on the impact being a little bit larger. And I do have some numbers from Pittsfield too, but theirs were actually pretty low. I was surprised how low they were, because Pittsfield is a pretty comparable community, although I would say their housing stock is a little bit more expensive than ours, just because Washtenaw in general is more expensive. They had 13 poverty exemption applications to date in 2021 as of last week. That was December 2nd. So they're right around where we are today, and I attribute that to the housing stock, the property values being higher. It's very difficult to get a mortgage, and I guess, that I didn't give context, just kind of the, who are we helping here, right? The families who we're going to be helping, because you have to own a home to utilize the program, it's going to be homes that are passed down through inheritance to predominantly disabled persons with disabilities and retirees. That's predominantly who we're going to be helping here. So you could have a person, a person with a disability who, today has to monitor exactly how much they make to make sure that they don't eclipse that, and the home was gifted via a relative. Or you could have a relative that comes upon hard times and didn't save for retirement, or had to kind of liquidate their 401k before they could retire and is in a difficult spot, and relatives step in and help gift a home to them. But they have very little income, right? They're living on Social Security and very limited fixed income in retirement. So that's predominantly who would be able to utilize it. And so it's a big impact for, the families who are eligible, but there's not a great deal of households who are going to be able to utilize it when we look at the Pittsfield numbers being at 13 for this year, and Williamstown being at 3 to 4, just because of the home ownership requirement. So, but that's, outside of our control. We only have so much utility in making this work. But it's an affordable, it's an effective use of our tax dollars to provide affordable housing to the folks who can find a way to come into home ownership.
Yes, Treasurer, and then Ms. Mazinski.
Just a quick question. Do you know if purchasing a home under a land contract would qualify under the definition of home ownership?
That's a good question. I would assume so, because I believe you would get the deed to the home under land contract.
It's worth asking our assessor for full, yeah. Land contracts can sometimes be a valid.
You actually don't get the deed to the home in land contract.
Okay. So I guess you would not be, well, it comes down to, can you claim a principal residence exemption? That's what makes you eligible. So, and that's what prevents people with secondary property, whether it's rental, whether it's vacation homes, from being able to utilize this. So the principal residence exemption is the key component.
Good questions to ask our assessor at some point.
Ms. Mazinski.
Thank you, Supervisor. I also want to thank Trustee Absmer for bringing this to the board. I think this is a fantastic way to increase affordable housing in Meridian. We've looked for developers to bring in affordable housing. We've looked for developers to even consider portions of their development to be affordable housing, and it's just hasn't been successful, and it's difficult to do. So I think this is a really great way to do that, to bring it to the township and at an affordable cost to us. I did have a couple questions for Trustee Absmer. So it's interesting that both Dexter and Scio Township had a 14% asset multiplier, or 14 multiplier in assets. Why would you think that might be? That seems significantly high compared to the others that you showed.
I think it just shows that from a policy standpoint, they don't want that to become, they don't really want assets to equate in whether or not people are eligible. What I forgot to point out to everybody, the way that it was uploaded into the packet, it doesn't show that that column with the name of the community is linkable, but if you hover, those actually are links to the actual poverty exemption guidelines. So you can see their 2021 guidelines. So for instance, with Scioto Township, let me just go to them real quick. You can see the multiplier on page, give me just a moment here. So it's on page 4 of Scioto Township's. It's item B, assets. And in that first sentence, it states that the applicable federal poverty income standard, as set forth earlier in the guidelines, will be multiplied by a factor of 14 for their asset limits. So when I read it, I think they just wanted assets to be, for the vast majority of people to qualify based on assets, so that income was the predominant qualifier. Do you come in, under the income threshold is the predominant qualifier in Scioto Township. There were others that had provisions where they allowed their board of review to exceed the income and asset thresholds if the family could show significant hardship by way of medical bills or other unorthodox, life expenses that they had been incurring. We talked about it internally with staff, and we all kind of concurred that we would go with a more prescriptive approach. And we also do have 2 board of reviews, so it's difficult to implement consistent discretionary policy with 2 different boards. So this policy is designed to be a policy in which the board of review can implement it, by the actual strict provisions pertained in it. And that also allows us to actually have some idea, to Treasurer Deshane's point, about the fiscal impact. Albeit, there's no perfect data set, and that's what we talked about, because we don't know people's, income and assets. One impact of this from an administrative perspective is going to be more work on Darla Jackson's part. Darla will incur more work in just trying to verify assets, because it's difficult to verify, right? So the omission of documentation is a logistical issue, but the policy question, if we can achieve all that and if we can implement it, is this a good use of our tax dollars? We're losing less than $1,000 per home, about 500 and change, to provide affordable housing in the township.
Thank you, that's helpful. One other question. So the proposal in front of us, you had mentioned that you can have a tiered approach, a 100%, 50%, and that some communities are using a 25%. That's the household income, correct? The percentages linked to that. And what was the thought process for you and the staff that worked on this of not to include a 25%?
Other communities only go up to a 2, and I just wanted it to be impactful. And other communities rely on their board of review to hand out, to select which percentage is going to be granted. We're going with a more prescriptive approach, and I wanted it to be meaningful and impactful for the families that do qualify. And I suspect if you have families coming before, it takes a lot, first of all, for the family to come in and share their personal story, right? It's not a very good policy, but that's the state policy, and we can't control that. But, for the families that do come in and make their case, I just had a hard time believing that the board of review in other communities that allow the board of review to decide, we're giving out a lot of 25% exemptions.
Okay, great. Last for now. I was trying to read through, you included the actual, the policy doc. Are these renewed, so would they need to be renewed annually? So.
Yes, we technically adopt these annually.
Okay, so the applicants, if they were to apply, they could apply each year?
They actually have to, with the exception of last year. There was a change in state law, and we adopted a resolution in accordance with that change that stated that if you qualified in 2019, you were able to requalify for the next 3 calendar years without having to reapply.
Okay.
So we do have some applicants who were eligible and approved in 2019 who are good for 2020, 2021, and 2022. That was kind of a one-off change in state law, and that was also a change in state law where they made it so that you can only give out 150 or 25% exemptions. Prior to that, you could have a little bit more utility. Some people did a formula where it phased out. So you'd start at 100% at one limit, and then it would phase to 0% at another limit.
That makes sense, especially with COVID, and like you said, people that have lost their jobs that, were making enough to live prior to that. It was interesting to me that Meridian Township's at a 12% poverty rate, where Scioto and Dexter were at like 6 and 4%. So we do have folks in our township that that could qualify and could really benefit from this. So again, I thank you. I would also like to see maybe some of our assessing numbers and something in writing too. That'd be helpful.
You're muted, Supervisor.
Thank you, Claire. Any more discussion? Well, why don't we bring this back after we get some more numbers? Mr. Officer, you have some more.
Yeah, I was just going to ask if the manager wanted to add anything on this item. On behalf of staff.
I'm glad because I can't see him in my...
No, the only thing I would add is that we had a really robust discussion amongst the staff, and I appreciate Trustee Opsimer coming in and meeting with our assessor and our team, and Ms. Jackson. If the board's goal is to include more people and make this more available to the community, I think Trustee Opsimer is definitely on the right path. So, but thank you for allowing us to share the information we had through the assessor's office.
Now, is there anything else? Okay, well, we'll bring this back in a few meetings after we have more data and are ready to proceed with it. Thank you. I really thank you, Dan. When you brought this to me, I was surprised at where we were compared to some of the other communities that were from. Definitely a program that's worth revising. Okay, then we'll have us back eventually. We're now to our third discussion item, which is special use permit number 2100011, 2763 Grand River Avenue, Consumers Credit, a modification of special use permit for buildings greater than 25,000 square feet. And do we have Schmidt here?
Yes, sir.
Okay, go ahead.
So the request in front of you this evening is for a 2,153 square foot credit union building, and you may be wondering why is that here, because that's well under 25,000 square feet. The unique piece of this is that the property at the southeast corner of Northwind and Grand River, where this is proposed to be located, southwest, is part of the Hobby Lobby parking lot. It's actually a separate parcel. It has always been a separate parcel as far back as we can tell. But it was included in the original approval for the expansion to that shopping center, which I believe at the time was a Giant Eagle, which is now Hobby Lobby. And so, in total, The sum of the buildings on the property that are subject to this approval are greater than 25,000 square feet, which is why this is in front of you this evening. The Planning Commission has reviewed this. They did make a positive recommendation on the special use permit for a building greater than 25,000 square feet, and they did approve the special use permit for the drive-through on the site after some modifications to the plans, to the design that you see in your packet this evening, which brings the building closer to Grand River Avenue and is more in line with the future desire for a form-based code. It still maintains quality access throughout the site, still maintains cross-access amongst the existing parcel, and I think most importantly to the owner and the applicant, it maintains good visibility to the main building to the rear, which was driving the location of the credit union originally to begin with. So at this point, staff has no other major comments. This is a relatively minor request to modify that previous approval. I do know the applicant does have a representative here this evening and is happy to speak to any concerns that the board might have as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schmidt. Compliment on your mask, kind of coordinated with your suit. Mr. Hausmer, you had your hand up.
Yeah, Director Schmidt, is this I'm guessing this is a land lease agreement?
You know, Nick, could you speak to that? I believe it's owned outright.
Hi, I'm Nick Lukes from Bosch Architecture. It will be a purchase of the parcel. It's a completely separate parcel that the developer that owns that shopping center is selling off. So
Okay, and Hobby Lobby is the current owner, correct?
No, it's a development corporation. I'm not sure. I've met the people. I'm not sure what their name is, but Hobby Lobby is not the owner. Hobby Lobby leases from them.
Okay, all right, that's my only question for the applicant. And then my other question, so Director Schmidt, my understanding was the Planning Commission was talking about access to the east for that service drive kind of running along the front of the proposed credit union, and the County Road Commission didn't want that access or that curb cut on Northwind due to, I believe, its proximity to Grand River.
Yeah, to be completely frank, we didn't even get there because I think we're very aware that that's the exact answer we're going to get. The access point would be, the curb cut would be far too close to Grand River to meet their safety guidelines.
Okay. So I guess my question isn't so site-specific here or specific to this project, but just holistically when we look at the form-based code, you know, how do we implement it with the service drives parallel to Grand River and when we can't have those access points due to proximity to Grand River?
That is an excellent question because fundamentally a form-based code and a service drive are diametrically opposed ordinance requirements. So it is something that we're going to have to look at going forward.
Okay. I mean, I do like what the Planning Commission did, and I like what the applicant did in moving it forward, and I do think that that's at least a hybrid, right? Like it kind of puts the building roughly where it needs to be. And then the space just south of like the drive-throughs and the ATM window, I'm guessing that's just going to be a green space. So
yeah, it's a relatively large green space to account for parking lot landscaping.
Okay. I don't have any problems with the current site other than it seems like that curb cut on Northwind Drive is highly problematic with the form-based code we've been working on. So, but other than that, I don't see any issues with the current site plan, and I'm happy to see that you're building on the impervious space that's there. So thank you. We appreciate that.
Other board members? Start with the clerk.
Thank you, Supervisor Stika. I appreciate the applicant working with the Planning Commission on the changes that you discussed. I wonder, including reducing the parking spaces and reducing the spaces in front of the building. I'm wondering if this isn't a major change, it's a minor teeny request, if there could be one more parking space for accessible parking. I know you have two on here. I'd like to see an additional parking space on there for accessibility. And then, so that's just a comment to the applicant, to the developer. And then my question, I guess it's for Director Schmidt. How does approving the form-based code affect current applicants, if at all? Do they have to change
It would
things?
not affect any of the existing buildings. What would happen is, as projects go forward, they would need to potentially, depending on how you set it up, come in under the form-based code. And so most people that have transitioned to these alternative forms of code have provisions in there regarding how much of a change would actually constitute requiring you to come in under this new code.
Okay, so what I'm hearing you say, that if you are working with somebody currently, you're letting them know about the form-based code and seeing how that works with their application, is that correct? But they don't necessarily have to do form-based code because they were already in the process, is that what I'm hearing, or am I?
So anything that's in the process right now would go through our normal existing codes.
Okay.
Until the actual form-based code exists, and there really is no ordinance yet, so people really can't go under it yet.
Okay.
Once that's in place, then the applicant will likely be able to either choose to go under that or the underlying zoning, depending on how we set it up. So until it's in place, it can't be forced upon anyone. But there would be no look back to an existing project to have to make changes under the form-based code.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Now it was Treasurer.
My question is also about form-based code, and while we haven't passed the ordinance yet, I'm wondering if this, being in opposition to our form-based code ideals for this part of the township, which is the first area we're going to implement it, slowed down the planning commission approval of this at all. Did they take that into consideration?
I'm sorry, I wasn't quite following you there.
Did the planning commission take into account the fact that this is contrary to our form-based code intention for this part of the township?
I think they were certainly moving towards trying to get a project that is closer to what we're looking for under our current ordinance. So they asked the applicant to make changes, which they were able to do, which brings the project more in line with that overarching goal.
My last would not be so much a question as a comment, and that is, if we're serious about form-based code, I think we need to come a little further with this project, because this is the first area we're going to roll it out in. And if there are further changes that can be made to make that in alignment with that, I think we should insist upon that as much as we can. While the form-based code isn't law yet, it is our intention to. And it seems crazy on the eve of passing form-based code to approve a project that, as you just said, in some ways is diametrically opposed to form-based code. Those are my comments.
And following up on that, last, to what extent did we share what the drafts look like of form-based code with this applicant, or did we?
We did not. The drafts are not in a position where there is a reasonable expectation of them being able to implement them into an actual ordinance.
Did we share any of the grand ideas or what we're really looking at for the future?
Yeah, once the planning commission wanted to push that further, we had a conversation with the applicant about the overarching goals of the ordinance, but the specifics just aren't there yet.
Yeah, I know they're not. So board members, where are we? Ms. Walensky.
Director Schmidt, could you tell me, so what components did the planning commission ask for them to be more in line with the form-based code that we really don't have yet?
So there was originally a row of parking in front of the building between Grand River and the building, and the building was set back about 30-ish feet further. And the planning commission asked them to move the building up so there was no parking in front of the building, reduce the amount of parking on the site, which the site is pretty overparked to begin with, so that wasn't necessarily a problem, and make it such that the vehicular traffic, as much as possible, was pushed to the rear or the side of the building, while still, trying to maintain that frontage road concept.
And what would be inconsistent with the very draft form-based code?
Yeah, so I mean, typically with a form-based code, you don't really see a frontage road. You see a building pushed up to your public right-of-way, where then the public right-of-way becomes part of the project, essentially, and there's improvements made there. And so that's somewhat difficult for us because we don't control our right-of-way fully, which is just another aspect that we need to look into. But that's really, I've certainly seen form-based codes where it's, you have vehicular uses in the front and it's sort of a hybrid. It's really more of a design code than anything else. But, a traditional form-based code is going to push that building all the way up to the front of the property line, basically.
And maybe the applicant can answer this. Why would that not be something that was proposed, pushing it all the way up?
The reason we didn't do that is because of the drive-through and accessing around the building. I mean, already there's a service drive that was existing that went along there, and we tried to push it up as much as we could, but still maintain. If someone came out of the drive-through, that lane becomes a one-way back out to the west. I guess it would be around the front of the building, so that's why we showed it that way. And to Tim's comment about the form-based code, and I'm from Kalamazoo. We have a township in Kalamazoo County that's on M43 there, and they tried to implement a form-based code in their area, but because MDOT controls that right-of-way, they have to put a frontage road in because they only allow a certain amount of curb cuts along there. So that's part of the reason why this frontage road is here, is because you're only allowed so many curb cuts along a state highway. So.
Okay, great. That's helpful. I guess those are all my questions. Overall, I'm in support of the project. I think, adding green space, developing on existing impermeable surface, it being a relatively small building, and the accommodations that you did take with the Planning Commission to get as close as we can to what we're hoping to see in that corridor.
Can I make one other comment on the
Yes,
form-based
please.
code? So Lansing, City of Lansing just adopted a form-based code in a portion of theirs, and we're doing a building there right now, another consumers credit union there. And they have provisions to where if it's on a road like a state highway, or this one's on Cedar Street, so it's right off of 96, they allow like one-row parking in front of the building, or just because of those reasons, because you have all of these, major roads where, people want visibility. So that's, there's different options for form-based codes, and the township that, our office is in, we're exploring that right now too for our downtown area to do that, and coming up with different options too. So a form-based code doesn't always push to the buildings close to the road. There's other options in there. I'm not sure where you guys are at in your adoption of your code, or I know there's drafts of it, but from the time you go from drafts to approval is a 3 to 4 month process, and we'd rather not wait that amount of time to get this approved. So
Yeah, understood. I appreciate that. That's helpful.
yeah.
Yeah, I guess, so I guess to clarify, so as Director Schmidt was kind of alluding to, the Planning Commission, when they drafted it, they had the zero setback, or just the 18-foot streetscape right on Grand River Avenue or M43. And that's where they were having a conversation. They came to the board to ask for our input. My personal input was keep the service drive as we currently have it codified, because that service drive, we have a setback from the curb or the center of Grand River, one of the two. And so that's what keeps that service drive consistent in terms of its setback linearly across Grand River. So regardless of which parcel you're on, that's what keeps it there. And I think that's what we're going to have to do. I think we're going to have form-based code with the streetscape just south of that service drive. So I think the Planning Commission did a pretty good job. My only concern was if a new use came to the building, the vehicular traffic can only go around in one direction. So that was the only thing that I saw. But I think that service drive is going to have to be there, because we're going to run into all sorts of issues with MDOT, but it also is traffic calming, because if you have that service drive and you have trees and a little bit of a berm and the pathway out there on the green belt, that gives some distance, and so the noise from the street is a little bit lessened. If there's a coffee shop and you're sitting on a chair, if this ceases to be a credit union at some point, it might be a Big B or the Big B of 30 years from now. And if you're sitting out there on their little concrete patio, the traffic is a lot less imposing with that green belt and the service drive. And the applicant was just saying you could also put in perpendicular parking, parallel parking, or diagonal parking off that service drive just to the south. And so, I mean, if we want them to slightly adjust it, we would have to say now, and it would just eat into that green space to the south, I'm guessing. The applicant can correct me if I'm wrong. Because, I mean, they could still maintain, I think, vehicular traffic all the way around, but make it so that they could make it the 26 feet, 4¼ feet that the service drive is on the west side there, where there's a lane going each way. And so that way, in the future, if it's not a drive-through credit union, the traffic could, be expanded to both directions around it, if it made sense based on the use. But then it's also a question of the streetscape. I don't know, you guys are a little bit diagonal, you're not kind of parallel on the store frontage, like what is kind of the dimension on the concrete patio that you have out front?
It's roughly about 10 foot from the front door to the curb right now, and then as it goes to my directions right here is to the west, I guess it would be, as you go. It's probably about 20 to 25 feet in that direction, so.
Okay, so as you're going west, it expands from about 10 feet minimum to 20 to 25 feet.
It's kind of a triangular shaped deal right now, so.
So I mean, that's what the planning commission did, is they took it from, it used to be where the green space is now, I think, and they pushed it up to at least possibly work with a hybrid form. Now it's possible we go with traditional form-based code somehow, and then this wouldn't conform whatsoever. But nothing that we would do today would conform at that point.
Yes, Mr. Duchesne.
This plan does seem to be consistent with our corridor improvement authority plan for Grand River, which is to carry the main traffic through the center lanes, and then a berm, and then service drives carrying the side traffic. So in that sense, it does seem consistent with our future vision for Grand River. Consumers Credit Union, is it a national firm? We have lots of credit unions here in this community, but I believe this is the first I've heard of Consumers Credit Union.
So
Tell me a little bit about it.
Yeah, they are a Kalamazoo-based firm. They have roughly 20, I should know this because my wife works there, 22 locations. So the closest one to here, they've just recently expanded into Grand Rapids. I believe there's 5 or 6 offices in Grand Rapids. We're doing one in Muskegon right now, Grand Haven. There's an office in Coldwater. There's several offices in Kalamazoo. There's one in Battle Creek. They're expanding across Michigan right now. So Lansing, right now we have plans for 4 locations in Lansing. One on Cedar Street, one in Delta Township off of 69 over there. This location, and then one up on Lake Lansing Road by 27, or 127. So they, like I said, they're one of the 5 largest credit unions in Michigan as far as assets go. So they're just trying to expand their footprint.
And they're a nonprofit
Correct.
credit union managed and run by its members.
Correct.
Although we know from the hospital system to be a nonprofit, there's no guarantee of affordability.
Yeah, so it's definitely a nonprofit managed by the members, owned by the members. So,
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Yes, Clerk.
Thank you, Supervisor. Where is the sign? Where does the sign go for this?
that we're not sure yet. So we work with the sign company and they get with your ordinance to figure out where it's going to go. We haven't figured that out yet to where that would be allowed on this parcel because of the setbacks off of Grand River and Northwind. That's what we're still trying to determine right now. So,
will you know that before you come back before us, or?
it would be whatever meets your ordinance. So I would have to get with the sign company and he usually researches the ordinance. But the question is if you're changing your ordinance, what are we supposed? Here's the hard part for me is I hear the comments about, hey, you need to meet the form-based code, but that's not even, if you go to your website or talk to your planner, that's not there. So I can only conform to what's currently in place, and that's what we've presented right now. As far as the sign goes, I'd love to have it out along Grand River, but I don't know if MDOT will allow that with their right-of-way and stuff. So that's what we're trying to determine right now, is where that can go. So
Okay.
yes, I will have an answer for you prior to coming back. Was it next week, I believe, is the action? I will have an answer for you by then.
Okay, and do you know what the traffic count is for this? Do you have any idea of how much?
On an average day, probably 50 cars, I would guess.
Okay,
I mean, it's not, in Newmarket, so I asked this question of the person that's in charge of the buildings. They said on an average new building, she said there could be, sometimes where you only have like 2 cars an hour. Their busy times are obviously end of the day, Fridays. Their drive-throughs set up a little bit differently, where they're not a straight like teller system. They're called a Teller Plus, and they're all video. So the teller is actually in Kalamazoo and brings it up. They service through the video. There's no tubes or anything like that. Everything's in the machine, and that's how they handle it. So they can staff, there's only 2 to 3 people that work at the branch on a normal time, and then even when you go inside, that's how they can manage most of their transactions inside, is through their tellers inside. There's not a person, I guess, a physical person you're talking to.
yeah, I noticed MSU Credit Union is changing theirs too.
Yeah,
to that.
I mean, there are people that work there that can, if
Right,
the box can't do what you want it to, there's people that can help you, but that's the plan, so.
and then I have one question for Director Perry. May or may not be related to this. Is MDOT looking at that signal right there for Northwind, any kind of left turn thing? It's very difficult around there.
I'm not aware of any MDOT signal study for Northland Drive at this point. Doesn't mean that they can't investigate it, but right now that's not one of the signals they're looking at.
Is that something we ask them to do, or is that something they?
Well, they do monitor all the intersections along the state trunk line, but if there's a community that has a specific need, you would request that. And again, traffic signals are based on warrants, and I'm not aware of enough activity at that signal to warrant one currently.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anybody have anything else to add? Mr. Schmidt, an applicant, do you have some direction before you come back?
Yeah, I think we should be good to, I'll get an answer on the sign, and I didn't hear much of anything else that needed my attention. So I will get that answer prior to next week, and see you next week. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, well, we'll see that at a future date. We now go on to comments from the public. I assume there's still no public there?
No public.
Is that correct? Okay. And then we have other matters from board members. No other matters from board members? Then we're ready to have a, yes, Mr. Deschênes.
I will say that tax bills were mailed last week, and any resident who didn't get their tax bill yet, please give us a call at 853-4140, and we'll send out another copy. The U.S. mail is not as reliable as it has been in the past, but we'll gladly send or email you a copy of your bill if you didn't get it already. But you should have received your tax bill from Meridian Township by today. That's all.
I can tell you I received mine. I'm sure everybody else here did too. That's when we love you the most, Mr. Deschênes. All right, anything else from board members? Motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Support.
If it moved and supported, any opposed? Then we're adjourned. Thank you. Sorry again for appearing this way.
Trying to give one, just gotta do due diligence.